a busted open on a Wednesday. Dave LaGreca and the innovator of violence, the landlord of the House of Hardcore, the heart and soul of professional wrestling, and your host each and every Monday night immediately after Monday Night Raw for Busted Open After Dark, the one and only Tommy Dreamer. Tommy, good morning to you.
Good morning, David. I'm sorry, I'm waving my hands in the air because I believe in Joe Hendry.
I believe in Joe Hendry. I gotta say, I'm a little disappointed, Tommy, and I want to throw it out there right at the top of the show, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Little disappointed in the NXT crowd that was at the Performance Center. They were kind of completely out of rhythm last night during Joe Hendry's appearance. Like, they continued to clap when there's no clapping in the song, and then when Joe Hendry did the whole wave your hands from side to side, they were completely off. Like, they were not in sync. Some people are going to the left. Some people are going to the right. So I usually don't critique a crowd, but the crowd at the Performance Center last night for NXT was a little off their game. But it didn't affect Joe Hendry, because Joe Hendry is now your number one contender and will face Ethan Page for that NXT World Championship coming up a week from Sunday.
Well, David, kind of been noticing that myself, so I'm kind of on board. I was like, what happened to our wrestling fans and their rhythm? If I could go back to the Public Enemy from ECW, most of the times the fans were in rhythm. They were, na 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 na, left and right. Everyone, here comes the hot stepper. Let's go Harlem Heat. Sha sha na 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 na. Everybody was doing it. The last time I've seen perfect rhythm is with everybody yeeting at the right time.
Yes.
But I've noticed it a lot when Joe's out there, and I'm like, why can't wrestling fans go left to right? I mean, what was that for a while where people would break out and dance? What was that called? Where there'd be like a surprise dance.
Oh, yeah, where it just
happening.
all of a sudden you start going to a dance-off.
Yeah. Forgot what those were called. Like, you're at the mall and all of a sudden this dance thing happens. Something happened with wrestling fans. We've lost our rhythm. I hope they find it back.
I hope so too. And Joe Hendry is there. He's doing it.
He's
you
choreographing.
can see him.
Perfect. He's the orchestra.
He's telling you where to go, what side to start, what side to go to. And not only that, there's also a Jumbotron with a video of Joe Hendry doing the same thing. So you would think it would be simple, but I just think people are off. But the worst thing was when, I believe in Joe Hendry. Clap, clap, I believe in Joe Hendry. And then it goes, in London, in Paris, and they continued to do the clap, and it was completely off. And then it's that awkward stopping of the clapping, because then they realize, wait, Joe Hendry's not clapping anymore. So it was a little embarrassing for the crowd at the Performance Center, but Tommy, it really didn't matter to Joe Hendry. He still got the inspiration and the motivation to pick up the victory, even though Ethan Page at every turn near the end of that match was preventing Joe Hendry, which I completely understand. Hey, he's an outsider. He doesn't even go here. He shouldn't be in this match. And this is pretty incredible what's going on with Joe Hendry, Tommy, because now he's going to be in the main event, for a PLE for NXT, and he is a contractual TNA employee. He's now the number one contender. So we could see a wrestler on the TNA roster be your next NXT champion.
Yeah, I mean, those are some ramifications. And Dave, earlier on the show, before the show started, I was thinking about, I have probably been one of those rare people that have been that outsider. I was the outsider for ECW versus WWE. I was the outsider for ECW versus Jerry Lawler's USWA. Been the outsider for ECW versus FMW. So I've been in this situation before. At times it's uncomfortable. I'm sure the locker room is much different than when it was every time I had to step foot in foreign soil. There were some things that I really liked. The outcome was cool. Where they're going to go. There's some things where you just got to be oh so careful when you are that outsider. Just because you toe the line. You also got to make sure you don't piss off a locker room of TNA people with, your representation. You can't let them down. Also, you can't let yourself down. You can't let NXT down. So there's a lot of moving parts to that when you are the performer. And, a lot of times this relationship so far has been pretty damn good because a lot of times end result, what is that end result? That's when egos get in the way because, you and I have discussed this when Jordan Grace went with Roxanne Perez, that was perhaps the most talk about biggest buzz that they had. NXT is gearing up for the move to the CW. And, Joe Hendry being the most liked video in WWE, not in NXT, in WWE, that's a massive selling point for this thing called TNA. So it's interesting. And then, hey, the show last night I thought was really, it was a good show. It was help setting up the next week, which I liked. The introduction of some new characters or new groups. And then at the end, the main event was very, very exciting. And then at the end, too, we had Zach Wentz show up and beat the living crap out of Wes Lee. And they kind of went off, to quote JR, it's breaking down in Tulsa. And, we're out of time. So there was a lot of moving parts to the main event because, like you said, Ethan Page was there. Ethan Page did everything in his power to make sure the match didn't go as planned for the outsider. And then here comes Trick Williams to kind of even the odds for that outsider. They have had a past relationship tagging together, and Trick does have rightful claim to the throne, but Trick's kind of been put on the back burner in, he's distracted. And he's distracted, but he also kind of countered the two men that have distracted him the most. So a lot of moving parts to that main event. I thought it was exciting. I thought Joe Hendry had an excellent performance. There was certain times where I was just like, especially when he did the double fall away slam and then, kipped up and hit his Joe Hendry pose. The fans are into it. The fans have been into it since he's shown up in NXT. And it will be weird in the sense of what do you do if he becomes your new NXT World Champion? Because like you said, Dave, he's under contract with another wrestling company. For me, I was never under contract with ECW, but I had turned down everybody. There's, the original outsiders, they were under contract. Kevin and Scott were under contract with WCW. I know WCW wanted to do an ECW invasion twice. And once was take everybody from ECW. And then the other time was kind of like a working thing, but it just didn't come to fruition because kind of, that's the tail end of the company for both companies. And it was more of a move out of desperation than anything that Dusty tried to put together. So it's, like I said, there was a lot of moving parts. I liked what I saw. I thought it was exciting. I thought the crowd was very, very into it. It's also, hard, Dave. We were joking about the rhythm, but, WWE has been on such a roll, and you look at the houses that they've been drawing for both Raw and SmackDown, and then when you come to NXT, obviously because it's in studio, it's going to be a very, very bigger, different dynamic once they go to the CW, and that's why I always tell wrestling fans, enjoy what you have, because if it goes away, you're like, oh, crap. Or go to those shows because, their next shows are going to be Chicago, St. Louis. If it catches on fire and it becomes a touring brand or a touring television brand, you ain't coming back to that, performance center. I think it will always be their home and their base because of what they have established. But if this thing catches, and you want to see every company do that, but it's definitely a possibility.
Yeah, it's interesting, and a bunch of things out of what you just said, Tommy. First and foremost, like you mentioned NXT last night, and obviously it was, we're getting closer and closer to No Mercy, so a lot of it was getting you invested in the matches that we're going to see at that PLE, but also the beginnings of other stories and other factions. NXT does a great job as they get closer to a big event to not just make it about the event that's coming up, to get you invested in a couple other things that aren't even going to be on the PLE. So they're always able to do that. And I want to get into some of that as well, because I thought it was very, very interesting, especially that new faction, Fatal Influence. But you mentioned Joe Hendry, and this is why it's such a unique dynamic, is that Joe Hendry's the babyface. Joe Hendry's coming in as a TNA wrestler, coming in to NXT, coming into the WWE Performance Center, now trying to win away the NXT Championship, and he's the babyface, and the heel is the person who's trying to prevent the outsider from coming in. Ethan Page on commentary said, Booker, I think, asked him why the hate for Hendry, and he's like, because he doesn't belong here. He's an outsider. He shouldn't be here. He shouldn't be in this match because he's not a contractual WWE employee. He wrestles for TNA. So why is he even in a match for my championship? If you think about it, Tommy, it makes a lot of sense, and it's a weird dynamic. This has happened throughout history in pro wrestling, but it's very rare where the outsider is the babyface and is coming in and trying to take away the NXT Championship and bring it back to another company.
Yeah, I mean, it's, what, number one, out of necessity. Number two, it's what's hot. ECW was hot. I was that babyface. Every time they would think that they could try to turn you. I mean, I went to Memphis and destroyed the studio, and the fans are chanting ECW, and I'm just talking from my experience because, like I said, I'm one of the very few people who have been a legit outsider working many different companies. And, I would always joke when I would see him. It's supposed to be me versus Jerry Lawler in a steel cage, and they're sold out, and they're getting more chairs, and the promoter was like, we need more chairs, all this stuff. And Bill Dundee gets up and walks right across the room and just holds court. And he goes, I'm walking over and shaking the hand of the man that helped draw this house, shakes my hand. He goes, thank you, Tommy Dreamer, because none of you fucks are drawing shit and you're all patting yourselves on your back. And he goes, you've all been here. The only thing different, it's him. And right then and there, I was like, oh boy, thanks, Bill.
Yeah, now you're under the gun.
But it also makes me look like crap to the other guys or jealous. And that you do take that spot. Like I said, the business is different, but don't think that if you're anybody, you should be like, oh, this Joe Hendry guy's in the main event of NXT. I want to be in that main event slot. Joe was the hot commodity, the hot act, and it's a proven because the ratings go up. This, like I said, this relationship has also helped NXT a lot. So where they go is interesting. And like I said, I thought his performance was excellent because you cannot fail. You're seriously representing both brands. If you hang on words or promos, if you say something wrong, you go back to the locker room you work for and be like, hey, dude, why'd you say that on national television? And then he could be like, well, my generation was, well, that's kind of how I felt. This generation is, well, that's what they wrote for me, or if he has that freedom, I don't know if he has that freedom, but if you say something that, may cause people in our locker room to feel like our brand is secondary, Again, these are just dynamics that you have to honestly, seriously consider at all times, because a word, you know this, what are you never supposed to talk about? Politics and religion. A word could set people off. One word, one move, one something can be like, you know what, this relationship's not working for me anymore. It's that simple how it could used to spark. I remember my whole thing, and I mean, I told you when the alliance, not the alliance, when Rob Van Dam went over, and we were all doing that in '97. It was over. Well, I'm not going to put that person over. Why should I? And it started from the WWE side. Why should I put that person over? Because he don't work here. And then it went, oh, well, then why do I have to? And then it was like, all right, we're walking. And we walked. Because it was like, hell, I don't work here. Again, different, or like what you agree to happen, and old school wrestlers got to kind of watch their back a lot more than it is today, which is cool. It's better for the wrestler.
Do you think, let me ask you on that point, Tommy. Do you think that the NXT locker room is thankful for a Joe Hendry? Because like you said, with Bill Dundee walking across that room and shaking your hand, do you think a lot of the locker room with NXT is like, hey, Joe Hendry, thank you because of you now being this, social media star and getting this groundswell of people following you and following your career, like you're bringing that to us? Do you think it's even a different dynamic in that way where, maybe there's not even just jealousy, but maybe they're even thankful because that might bring more eyes to the NXT product?
The NXT locker room, every time I'm there, it's one of, I said this, it's one of the most positive interactions I've had with WWE in a long, long time. When I first went, it was forever. Like, it was my, wow, this is different. They're also like, they're not old school wrestlers. They're new athletes, and they have that team mentality. And so they should, because this is to help both brands, and it's beneficial that way. It's, again, an unheard of relationship, but it has to be it's a trustworthy relationship. You have to just, hey, well, here's this, but here's this. And you just got to be careful on, and that's not the wrestlers, that's the management and what the management teams want to do. But I do, that locker room is great. And, they don't think like that. They could think that I want to be in the main event. Cool. Then how do I get there? And it's like, well, you, excuse me, you will get there, but you got to work hard. I mean, what's a big part of Joe Hendry's? Yes, I became this sensation, but I've also been doing this for 10 years, and I'm showing the world why I belong. This wrestling thing is really about breaks, and Joe got over. Joe got himself elevated on himself with, his videos, all that stuff. He had a buzz. Then the world shuts down. How does he keep that buzz going? He starts creating these videos for himself. I mean, he's come on. And he's also, the best part about Joe, he's working his ass off, man. He's down in NXT. He's helping training. Then he goes and does indies. I mean, he's working his ass because, to quote John Cena, his time is now. And you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. If something happens, when I say they, if one team or another team doesn't like something that goes down, you pull the plug and it's over. And you can't even say in 2024, well, he's in an advertised match, let's finish it up. No, you can say no. And I mean, even in WWE, they have let people go who were in advertised matches on a PLE, and then they just had to change that. So it's not happening. Just going point, counterpoint. I think the relationship has been successful from both sides. I truly, truly love working with the NXT talents, and can praise them to the highest of praises of how they are as professionals.
No, I love that NXT locker room. The few times that I've been able to be there and do some of those pre-shows for NXT, I mean, there's nothing like it. It's like you said, maybe the most positive experience I've had with any company has been with the NXT brand. When it comes to Joe Hendry, and I I had the opportunity, Tommy, because of you. I interviewed Joe Hendry in White Plains. I guess it was last summer for TNA, and getting to speak to him and how talented he is, not only in the ring, but, as a musician. And he wanted to incorporate everything that he can do to his character and his persona. And he has gotten over, to quote what you just said, he's gotten over in a very unique way as well. When you look at people who have truly gone to that next level and have gotten themselves over, it's usually because of a story or because of their character. This is really completely different. It really is a lot to do with social media and those videos that he's done and his song. And, he's been on our air pushing that song, releasing that song and saying, hey, let's get behind this. I can't really put my finger on why he's so over, but he's over. Like, to the point where fast food restaurants on their board are saying, I believe in Joe Hendry. NFL players that are arriving to training camp are saying, I believe in Joe Hendry. We're seeing his heads everywhere. Those Joe Hendry heads are normal every single week on SmackDown and, on Monday Night Raw. Like, and I'm just wondering, and I'm not arguing, but I'm wondering, like, what is it about Joe Hendry that the fans have gravitated towards? It's almost a question to our Busted Open Nation. Like, what is it about Joe Hendry that makes you want to cheer for him and makes you to want to believe in him?
He has a humbleness to him as a person. That uniqueness and his wit is what I feel got him over when he was, over in the UK and working for, I believe it was Progress. And again, all these videos, because if you go on a Joe Hendry YouTube rabbit hole, there's a lot of entertaining stuff. If I can, some people might get this, some people might not. Weird Al Yankovic. He has that. Why did we like Weird Al Yankovic when he came on? He's making parodies of songs that were popular, and they were witty. They were different, and they're like, oh yeah, like I get it. I feel it's kind of the same way. If you understand it and you get him, he's a big fan. I don't feel Joe Hendry's going to be a one-hit wonder. I feel Joe Hendry's going to continue, and people will continue to believe. The other way why Joe got over was presentation. From his music, all that stuff, and then in TNA, that he did the first rock concert. That was the first time anything like that happened, and it reminded me of when The Rock did it. But just he'd tell the people like how to sing with him, and he does. He has a nice voice, but he was just presented different. If you think about the base of Joe Hendry, you had to say his name, and then he appeared. He lost a piece of that saying, I'm going to continue to be here, which makes you less special. But at least the next week, which we talked about last week, he explained why. Old school ECW, 911. Somebody would mess up, here came 911 to rid the wrong of, but that was also then done by design, that most people don't realize it, that they got worked. And then he was the guy who'd come in if something got messed up, or then he became the guy who, when shit was hitting the fan, here came 911. And he was mega over. I mean, he was over. I do not feel that, like I said, Joe Hendry would be a one-hit wonder if I could compare that to him. I think he will continue on his path because I see the improvements. Or whatever there were holes in his games, because he's doing and he's in that zone right now. It's like the switch flipped for him.
Yeah, but it's so funny because he doesn't work for WWE, so he's doing it on I know he's doing it on the TNA platform, and they actually mentioned that on the show last night. Like, stay on Thursdays. You're on Thursday nights. This is Tuesday night. But I find it interesting. He's doing it on the WWE platform. And we've seen it before, Tommy. We saw it with Bobby Roode with Glorious. that theme was so over and everybody loved to sing along to it. And the next thing you know, they pull the plug. Fandango, you know, how over he was, even beating Chris Jericho at WrestleMania. You think he's going to be the next best thing, and they pull the plug. And here it's even a completely different story because he's not even on the WWE roster. So let me ask you, because, and we'll probably talk more and more about this, especially next week before we get to the PLE. Do you think Joe Hendry beats Ethan Page?
Oof, I don't know. You know, it's funny you said that about the music. Music is always key, right? Adam Rose and the Rosebuds.
Yeah.
I don't know that answer. I think it's interesting if he does win, because it wasn't like you said he's a babyface, and it's not like I'm going to take this title. When Bubba and Devon were leaving, they ECW, they literally won the titles on their last night, and then Bubba, it was beautiful because they went to babyfaces and then turned to heels and said, we're going to now take these titles and lay them down at the altar of the WWE, and people like, you sons of bitches. And they got heat because it was like, wait, we love you, now we're in shock, and now you're going to like turn on us? And it's not like the Outsiders when they first came in. Yes, they were getting cheered, but it was like, we're going to destroy this company. It's different dynamic. It would be different, man. I could see there's a point counterpoint for yes and a point counterpoint for no. It's intriguing. Also, last night, the involvement of Trick coming back was super interesting to me. Because again, Dave, like, I do work for TNA, but I know nothing. I literally sit back and watch stuff unfold on television, and I love it.
So let me, on your point, what would be the one good thing if Hendry wins, and what would be the one good thing if Hendry loses?
If he wins, this continues, and then you have representation of NXT across more platforms. If he loses, where do you go? Both brands. And if it's just over on one, then you have to just concentrate on I don't want to say a rebuild, but just what is his now goal in TNA? Those are the things you have to think about. I remember when the WWE deal got niched. Okay, where do I go? Where do we go with Rob Van Dam? Where does Sabu go? Where does Sandman go? We kept plugging away, but it was different. We did not get the end result and payoff that we were promised, which was the match at SummerSlam with, Dreamer and Sandman versus Van Dam, Sabu, Jerry Lawler, Paul Heyman in the corner. All this stuff was talked about, but card always subject to change. End result, we didn't get it. What we did get, Tommy Dreamer versus Jerry Lawler, and you're in, you're out, you're done. The other best part about that whole thing, Jerry Lawler was never under contract with WWE. He was an announcer. He wasn't the wrestler. But Jerry had this unique, dynamic deal with WWE for years where he was allowed to do both and go work other places. And again, man, you when you talk about outsiders doing it, I got to give the king his due. Jerry Lawler won the AWA title when he was not working for, under contract with the AWA. That's old school, let's shake hands and do good business. So we have seen that precedent before a few times. But again, Jerry Lawler was the heel, though he was beloved in Memphis. It's such an interesting dynamic. And then historically, like you said, been done before, but it was always done, Dave, out of necessity. Jerry Lawler was hot. There's an end goal that people need to see. And once you achieve that, then where do you go?
Yeah, that's why I'm very interested what happens at No Mercy. And I know it's early. I know we still have over a week before we get there, but I'm going to ask the question to the nation, and the question is easy. It's, do you believe in Joe Hendry? I want to know the whys And I want to know if you really think he's going to be your NXT champion coming out of No Mercy.